Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. I want to talk about profiting by buying businesses. There's two main points I'm going to make in this video. The first, this is designed for a beginner, someone who's coming in, probably doesn't know the business, maybe it's the first business they've ever bought, and how to make that work, how to profit from that, and then also an introduction into what's called a multiple arbitrage, how to expand a business and profit by growing it, by scaling it up. So the goal is initially to buy one business, learn how to operate it, and then increase revenue, and then scale it up. It becomes more valuable as you scale it up. And like I said, this is designed for beginners. If you don't know the business, you can rely on staff, the existing staff, and the owner. That includes if the owner is the only person in the business. If you're really starting small, which is not a bad idea if you're brand new. If you don't know the business and it's the first business you've ever bought, buying a one-owner business can be a great way to learn because the financial risk is low, obviously, right? If you buy an existing business that has a lot of staff, that's going to be a more expensive proposition. So if you don't know the business when you buy it, rely on the owner and staff to learn, to teach you. And if you need to provide an incentive to the owner to stay involved for a short time, and that's a negotiated thing, how long they stay involved to train you, you should do that. And you should keep in mind, if you're brand new at that business, that's something you'll probably need to do. Okay, so what kind of business is the right business to buy if you're starting from the beginning, if you've never bought a business before? So you should buy a needs and not a wants business. This is a recurring theme in my videos where I sort of tell people, if you're buying a business or if you're involved in a business, you're in a better position if the product or service is a need and not a want. Because in an economic downturn, the first things that consumers start to cut are wants, right? They stop going out to dinner, they stop going to the movies, they stop anything that they need to cut depending on the severity of the downturn. With the most recent inflation, people cut a lot of stuff out of their monthly expenses. Buy a needs-based business. So a wants type of business, it could be like a bakery, an ice cream shop, things that people really don't need. A needs business, on the other hand, hair cutting, that's essential. You can't show up for work looking like a hippie from the 1960s. Haircuts is a needs business. Gas station, a small gas station, a plumbing company, and so you get the idea. Anything you can identify as something that people cannot do without is a good candidate if you're just starting buying businesses. If it's the first time you've ever bought a small company, focusing on a need is the best way to go. So how do you fund the purchase? An SBA loan? If you have a needs business, the cool thing about this, because you might think, okay, SBA loan, I'm taking out a loan, I'm on the hook for paying back the loan. True, right? But if it's a needs-based business, you're going to feel a lot better than if it was a wants type of business. You can say to yourself, okay, I'm taking on debt, but this is a product or service that people need, and so it should be fairly straightforward to be able to make the payments on the loan. You can also, for funding, try to rely on the seller for owner financing. You can work out a deal where the owner accepts a small initial down payment and then allows you to pay off the full purchase price over time. So a needs-based business, getting a loan, an SBA loan, you can sleep better at night than if it's something that people will cut at the first sign of an economic downturn. So let's say, as an example, we're going to buy a needs-based business, a bookkeeping business. You buy the business, you close on the business. Hopefully you've worked out an agreement with the owner. If the owner's the only person involved, you're definitely going to need to have the owner train you. Learn how they market. Are they using social media? Are they using digital ads? Are they using local ads? And they may not be. They may be relying on word of mouth. That's an opportunity to increase the revenue of the business by improving the marketing, because marketing generates leads for the business. And if they're not actively using social media or digital ads or local ads, that's an opportunity to go in and improve the number of customers the business has. If the business has been up and running for a while, say it's a haircut place, they may be relying only on word of mouth. You may be buying from a retiring owner, and you can ramp up the number of customers by improving the marketing. Okay, so what technology is the business using? You should learn that. This is the first several weeks, 3 months, 6 months of the business. This is a bookkeeping company, so Are they using technology? What kind of technology are they using? Do they have customer relations management software? Do they have QuickBooks? What's the status of their technology? If you're buying an older business, that might be a way to improve operations by updating the technology. It's not that uncommon if you're buying from an older owner-operator that they're not up to date with technology. So when you buy this business, you should seek stability for the first 3 to 6 months. Like nothing else is a higher priority than stabilizing the business for the first 3 to 6 months. That means no staff changes. Even if there are underperforming employees in the business, you should seek stability and not replace anyone. You need to learn from these people everything you can. We're entering this business. It's the first business we bought. We don't know how this business works. We have to learn from staff, so we're not going to replace anyone for the first 3 to 6 months. And on your list of what you should try to learn those first 3 to 6 months, the marketing, how the company generates leads, selling, how do they close the leads, the operations, that means fulfilling the customers. In a bookkeeping business, that means actually doing the books for the company, providing them the reports that they need, the financial reports for their business, and handling any customer input like customer feedback or requests. That's what fulfilling the customers is. And then the finance function of the business, the cash flow, the cash into the business, the cash out of the business. You should learn these areas: marketing, sales, operations, and finance. The administration and the human resources comes later because we're not replacing any staff. We're keeping the staff as is. We're buying this business not really knowing too much about it. It's the first business we bought. We just want to learn operational skills and stabilize it for the first 3 to 6 months. So after that initial period, 3 to 6 months on, you can start looking at staff. You can decide, okay, do I need to hire additional staff? If you have improved the marketing and you're generating more customers, you may need to hire more staff, right? So this is a time to start thinking about that. If you need to replace some existing employees that are, because sometimes when you buy a business, employees have a close relationship with the owner, but you may not jibe with them personality-wise. So you may need to replace someone, who knows? And the technology, the systems, improving what they have or may not have over that 3 to 6 months period. You should try to deploy technology if they are not already doing that. And also take a hard look at their monthly expenditures, their expenses for software as a service, because a lot of times if they are using products, software as a service products, they may not be aware of how much they're spending, because a lot of SaaS companies will require you to pay by credit card, an automated payment monthly, and so the owner may start to lose track of that. Now, again, we're seeking stability in the beginning. We're trying to get into the business, learn how to operate it, learn all the functions, and not change any staff, and not really change too much. But at some point, you're going to be confident enough. Okay, I know how to do the marketing. I know how to close customers. I can do some of the sales. I know how to operate the business, the finance part. Let's get a handle on some of the other things. The technology may need to replace some of the, or actually start using some of the technology that's available. Customer relationship management. For bookkeeping, it would be QuickBooks, and so on. And then you should acknowledge your lack of skill in marketing. If this is the very first business you've bought, unless you have previous marketing experience, it may not be a bad idea after you've stabilized the business and you've learned how to operate it. If you need help with marketing, if you lack marketing skill, to hire a marketing agency. And then the longer term, let's assume that you own and operate the business and you've stabilized it, you've increased the marketing activity, you've grown the customer base, you've grown the revenue. At some point, you're going to be confident, okay, I know how this business works, I know how to operate it. If another business came along, I'd be able to take that one over. And instead of 3 to 6 months, you may be able to hit the ground running and within the first week have a turnaround in that business, if it's the same type of business. In other words, if we're buying a bookkeeping business as the very first company, right, and we learn how to operate that, the next business, if that's a bookkeeping business, you're not going to spend 3 to 6 months in a learning curve, figuring things out. You can buy it and hit the ground running. The only caveat there is if each time you buy a small company, the human resources issue, the cultural issues, even if it's a very small company, like I said, if employees have a very close relationship to the seller, the owner of the business who's selling it, You have to have some people skills, because even if you know how to run the business in general, you still need those existing employees when you start buying additional businesses to stabilize that company. So you can hit the ground running and for some things. You can make technology changes, but you also have to be aware of the integration of the new staff, the people issues at the new company, because especially the customers who interface directly with the customers of the business. So you want to be aware that just because you know how to operate, you have a human issue there. Whenever you buy a new company, you're going to have to integrate those people into how you operate. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the 5-year plan for this, again, we're starting off as a raw beginner. We buy a first business, but a 5-year plan, we want to scale this up. We want to scale up this enterprise. We've learned how to increase revenue and earnings for that first business we bought. We have enough confidence that we can operate that successfully. So now we're going to buy a second needs business, the same type, preferably, another bookkeeping company, another small bookkeeping company. And again, you can use an SBA loan or owner financing to get the second business. And who's going to be selling these? It's going to be a retiring owner, an underperforming operator of the business who doesn't like it or for some reason or is tired of it, or a competitor. The competitor is going to be a little expensive, a little more expensive than buying from an underperforming because the underperforming operator selling a bookkeeping business, they just want it gone. It's a problem for them. They don't want it anymore. But the competitor, if they're a successful business, it's not going to be as easy to get a really good deal on that. But that being said, if they're a competitor and you can retain their staff, their employees after you buy them, it's always good to buy competitors. Because again, we're over a 5-year period, this 5-year plan, we're trying to buy related companies. The goal is to have a larger business to increase revenue and earnings. And so that's where multiple arbitrage comes in. So what is multiple arbitrage? Okay, so when you buy a small bookkeeping business or a small company, generally you're going to be paying a multiple of either the earnings or the revenue. So let's assume we're going to be paying a multiple of earnings. Let's say the small bookkeeping business has earnings of $100,000 annually. Generally, a multiple of somewhere between 1 and 2 of that profit will be the selling price. In other words, if the business is earning $100,000 a year, the selling price is going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 for that one business. Okay. So the multiple in this case is between 1 and 2, 1.5, 2 times earnings. That's what the business sells for. Now, these are small companies that we're buying. We're not buying large enterprises, right? So small businesses sell 1 to 2 times earnings or revenue, but a $10 million company, instead of a company that's earning $100,000 a year in profit, a business earning $10 million in profit, the multiple is going to be higher, somewhere between 5 and 10 perhaps, or even more than 10, depending on the business, because private equity buys that type of business. Private equity buyers assemble companies with earnings in that range into a larger company, and then they either go public with the company or they sell it. So it's sort of like a food chain. You're at the very beginning buying a small business for a multiple of 1 to 2 times earnings. You gather a bunch of those up over your 5-year plan into a large bookkeeping enterprise, possibly including tax preparation and accounting services for businesses. And then if you reach 10 million in earnings, you really have something sellable for a much higher multiple. So you paid 1 to 2 times earnings, you can sell for 5 to 10 times earnings. So that's called an arbitrage. An arbitrage is when you buy at a low price and you sell at a much higher price. And the reason it's possible is private equity buyers in general, they're not going to do this. They're not going to start buying small $100,000 a year companies because private equity, the way that business works, they raise money from investors called limited partners. So the private equity firm, they have millions and millions to invest. They cannot, it would be like if someone gave you $1 million and told you to go to a dollar store and you'd have $1 million and you'd have to buy 1 million things worth $1. You're not going to do that. You're going to say, no, I'm going to go buy 4 Lamborghinis and be done with it. So private equity, they have a lot of capital to put to work. They can't do what you do. They could, but they prefer buying larger entities and they don't mind paying a higher multiple because you've done a lot of work here. I mean, the private equity is paying a higher multiple of the earnings. So for a $10 million business, let's assume you assemble over 5 years an accounting firm, bookkeeping, accounting, tax prep, and you're earning $10 million per year in earnings. And let's say that a private equity firm offers you 10 times earnings, $100 million, right? So that helps them deploy their capital. And they prefer that, they much prefer that over trying to buy small mom and pop $100,000 a year businesses. So the private equity buyer has a lot of capital to put to work. They're paying you for the effort that you made in picking off those small companies, integrating the workforce, the human side of that to get everyone integrated into the larger company. So the private equity buyer does not mind paying a higher multiple because they're paying you for all that work you did over your 5 years. So that's kind of the way multiple arbitrage works. The multiple is 1 to 2 for the small businesses. That's your job. Private equity's job is to buy these guys. Private equity will then buy several of these size companies and then possibly take it public. So it's a food chain of scale, basically. In the beginning, you buy a $100,000 a year earnings business. At the top, someone has assembled a bunch of companies and they go public. So the multiple is different depending on where you are in the food chain. So you're paying a low multiple, private equity is paying a higher multiple. When private equity takes a company public, the multiple can be 20, 25, 30 times. It's a much higher multiple. So at each step, the private equity buyer, they get paid to assemble a bunch of these businesses. When they go public, they get a higher multiple. So the arbitrage is not just pulling a rabbit out of the hat. There's a reason for it. The work that's done by you over 5 years is why they're willing to pay you a higher multiple than what you paid. So again, this was just starting off from scratch, not knowing how. This could be the very first business you bought. You want to buy a first business, you want to learn how to operate it, increase the revenue, and then scale it up over a 5-year plan, scale it up with several related businesses, and then possibly sell to a private equity buyer. If you have any questions about this, and by the way, obviously, along the way, you're not only making a great return on your effort when you get bought by private equity for a 5 to 10 multiple, right? Along the way, during the 5-year plan, you're earning all that, you're getting all the earnings from those businesses that you're putting together. And that brings up an important point. I want to mention that the very first company that you buy, there's going to be a lot of inefficiency, and it comes down to when you buy that first bookkeeping business, for example, does the owner, does the staff know what to tell you so that you can more quickly come up to speed? Sort of the answer is no, because they don't know what your background is. So the inefficiency for that very first company you buy, it could cause you some consternation because you can look at it and you can say, I'm not really making a lot of money here. What's the point? The point is you have to pay for the education. So you pay for the education in a couple of different ways. Being patient and waiting for things to start working as you learn more how to operate that first business, and you don't make as much. That very first business, you can't expect to make a ton of money. You're paying, in a sense, you're paying for the education to learn how to be an operator. The second business you buy, when you start buying additional businesses, then you've paid for the education already. And over that 5 years, you're earning money from the businesses that you're buying and including into your larger entity. So you're making money over the 5 years, you're profiting over that 5 years, and when you sell to private equity, you're doing pretty well by selling at a much higher multiple of earnings. You've created a $10 million profit business, you get to sell it 5 to 10 times that, 50 million to 100 million. So there are a lot of people who do this. Rolling up small businesses, it's a food chain. It starts off at the very bottom with buying small mom and pop, rolling them up, selling to private equity. Private equity buys a bunch of larger entities, middle market companies. Then they create a large entity and they go public. If you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And I really want to thank everyone for watching. Have a great day.